Hello, knowledge seekers. In this episode of 20-Minute Books, we explore Hiroshima by John Hersey. First published in 1946, this groundbreaking book provides a vivid, harrowing account of the aftermath of the atomic bomb dropped on Hiroshima in 1945, told through the eyes of 6 survivors. Hersey's detailed narrative captures the human side of this catastrophic event, focusing on the resilience and suffering of the people who lived through it. Hiroshima is more than just a historical account. It's a profound commentary on the impact of war on innocent lives. John Hersey, an esteemed American journalist and Pulitzer Prize-winning author, brings his formidable skills to bear in this compassionate exploration of tragedy and survival. His work not only tells the stories of those who endured, but also reflects on the broader implications of the use of nuclear weapons. This book is a must-read for history enthusiasts, fans of character-driven narratives, and budding journalists eager to learn about the power of impactful storytelling. Join us as we delve into the experiences documented by Hersey, uncovering the human stories behind one of the most devastating moments in modern history. Hiroshima: The Stories of 6 Survivors of the Atomic Bomb. Introduction: A gripping tale of survival and resilience. Life in Hiroshima, post-atomic bomb. Imagine the deafening roar of an atomic bomb, the blinding flash that turns day into night, and the landscape of a bustling city reduced to rubble within seconds. In 1946, a year after the catastrophic event that altered the history of Hiroshima, journalist John Hersey penned an evocative account detailing the harrowing experiences of 6 survivors. These individuals, miraculously spared the fate of immediate death, found themselves amidst unimaginable destruction, embodying stories of both profound tragedy and immense courage. Hersey's narrative, initially featured in The New Yorker and later expanded into a standalone book, is a testament to the power of human spirit and journalistic brilliance. Employing narrative techniques reminiscent of novelistic storytelling, Hersey brought to life the stark realities faced by these survivors, thereby laying the groundwork for what would later be known as new journalism. His work not only captivated readers, but also set the stage for future literary greats like Truman Capote. In 1985, nearly 4 decades later, John Hersey revisited Hiroshima to catch up with the lives of the 6 individuals he had once written about. This follow-up chapter added another layer to their ongoing tales of recovery, adaptation, and resilience, showing how the shadows of a single day had stretched across decades. This poignant narrative encapsulates the immediate aftermath of the explosion, detailing how it influenced the city's weather patterns and subsequently the survival strategies of those who lived through it. It also explores the compassionate efforts by the people of Hiroshima to aid one another amidst chaos. Listeners will be drawn into an intimate exploration of how such a dire experience shaped the lives and destinies of the survivors in the many years that followed. Through moments of despair and glimmers of hope, this story underscores an indomitable will to forge forward, making it a profound lesson on the endurance of the human spirit amidst the darkest of times. Part 1. The Moment That Changed Everything. Surviving the Hiroshima Blast. At precisely 8:15 a.m. on August 6, 1945, the lives of 6 individuals in Hiroshima were forever altered by a series of minute, arbitrary decisions. Their positions and actions at that fateful moment, whether they were walking, sitting, or merely leaning, became the thin line between life and death. Reverend Mr. Kiyoshi Tanimoto found himself on the outskirts of Hiroshima that morning, assisting a friend in moving his possessions to a safer location in anticipation of possible air raids. The day was unusually calm. That is until a blinding flash pierced the morning sky. Instinctively, Mr. Tanimoto threw himself between some rocks for cover, miraculously unscathed by the chaos that unfolded around him. Similarly, Mrs. Hatsuyo Nakamura, a widow of war, benefited from her adherence to official evacuation advisories. With her 3 children by her side, she watched a neighbor dismantle his house to prevent potential fire spread from bombings. The overwhelming explosion sent her flying across the room, shrouded in debris but remarkably uninjured. Her children's voices calling out to her amidst the rubble confirmed their miraculous survival. Dr. Masakazu Fuji's morning routine on his porch, clad only in his underwear while reading the newspaper, took a surreal turn when the blast catapulted him into the river, where he found himself wedged between timbers from his now destroyed clinic. This peculiar position saved him from a worse fate. Father Wilhelm Kleinsorger, a German Jesuit, experienced a similar shock. One moment he was reading peacefully, the next he wandered dazed through his mission house's devastated vegetable garden, struggling to grasp the extent of the devastation. Elsewhere, Dr. Terufumi Sasaki, an early riser due to a restless night, was navigating the corridors of the Red Cross hospital. As the bomb detonated, he instinctively crouched, narrowly avoiding severe injury as his surroundings crumbled, leaving him with only the loss of his glasses and footwear. Miss Toshinki Sasaki, no relation to the doctor, faced her ordeal in the tin works office where she was employed. She instinctively turned away from a window as the building succumbed to the bomb's force, burying her under a heap of books and debris, severely injuring her leg but, crucially, sparing her life. Through sheer fortune and split-second decisions, these 6 residents of Hiroshima survived the initial blast, each poised to face the aftermath and the transformed landscape of their city. Part 2. Amid devastation, Mr. Tanimoto's journey of survival and aid. In the eerie aftermath of the atomic blast that devastated Hiroshima, Mr. Kiyoshi Tanimoto cautiously emerged from his rocky hideout, stepping into what resembled an apocalyptic landscape. The sky, once clear, now shrouded in a dust-induced twilight, presented a haunting backdrop to the confusion and chaos below. His immediate encounter was with a procession of soldiers, emerging bloodied and stunned from an improvised hillside dugout. Among the cries of pain and confusion, he heard the desperate call of an injured woman clutching a young boy. Guiding them through the debris-strewn streets, Mr. Tanimoto led them to a nearby school which had been designated as an emergency assembly point. Here, amidst the shattered glass littering the floor, already gathered were some 50 other survivors, all echoing similar tales of horror and disbelief. Compelled by a need to grasp the full extent of the destruction, Mr. Tanimoto climbed a nearby hill. The view that unfolded before him was one of unrelenting catastrophe. The city was engulfed in smoke, dust, and relentless fire. The falling droplets he initially mistook for firefighting efforts were, in reality, a grim aftermath of the atomic explosion. Returning from the hill, he found his friend, Mr. Matsuo, miraculously unharmed. Overwhelmed by his own relatively untouched state, Mr. Tanimoto felt a surge of duty to aid those less fortunate. He ventured towards the heart of the city, a decision that would confront him with harrowing sights and the palpable agony of his fellow citizens. Victims marked by ghastly burns that imprinted patterns of their clothing onto their skin moved limply in a mass exodus from the center. In their midst, he could only offer hushed apologies, feeling undeservedly spared. Pushing onwards, Mr. Tanimoto covered 7 exhausting miles and even swam across a river in his determination to find and assist his family and congregation. Fortuitously, he stumbled upon his wife and daughter, who, in shock, scarcely recognized the gravity of their reunion amid such chaos. Driven by a profound need to serve, Mr. Tanimoto eventually reached Asano Park, where many survivors had congregated. Here, amidst the desolate aftermath, he dedicated himself to aiding as many as he could, navigating the relentless challenges posed by a city in ruins. His actions in the face of such overwhelming adversity highlighted not just a story of personal survival, but an unwavering commitment to community and assistance in the darkest of times. Part 3. Enduring the Aftermath. stories of heroism and heartbreak. In the chaotic aftermath of the Hiroshima bombing, the survivors faced a reality draped in the darkness of uncertainty and suffering. Among them was Mrs. Hatsuyo Nakamura, who had just managed to free her 3 children from the debris of their decimated home. Her daughter Mieko, only 5 years old, asked, "Why is it night?" unable to comprehend the sudden darkness enveloping the city. In a disoriented state, Mrs. Nakamura made a quick decision to protect her sewing machine, her sole means of livelihood, by submerging it into a water tank, hoping to shield it from potential fires or further destruction. She then heard that survivors were gathering at Asano Park, and she started making her way there, passing by the shocking sight of their neighbor who had been dismantling his house only moments ago, now lifeless. Simultaneously, Father Wilhelm Kleinsorger, the German Jesuit priest, was also navigating the ravaged cityscape. In a frantic effort to secure resources, he ran past Mrs. Nakamura to place a suitcase full of money inside an air raid shelter. Upon his return, he encountered a fellow priest in dire need of assistance and the mission's secretary, Mr. Fukai, overwhelmed with despair and refusing to evacuate. Despite Mr. Fukai's protests, Father Kleinsorge carried him towards safety, only to have him escape back into the inferno. Dr. Masakazu Fuji, who had narrowly escaped death by water, spent precious moments trapped within the river's embrace. Upon freeing himself, he contemplated the scale of the devastation and speculated that only a multitude of bombs could account for such widespread damage. With his surroundings engulfed in flames, he resigned himself to wait until it was feasible to start the painful journey to his family's home outside the city. Meanwhile, Dr. Terufumi Sasaki, relatively unscathed and stationed at the Red Cross Hospital, found himself thrust into the role of a frontline medic. Using salvaged glasses from a nurse, he swiftly began administering aid to anyone he could, prioritizing those at risk of bleeding to death. For a relentless 19 hours, Dr. Sasaki treated the wounded, finally collapsing from exhaustion, only to be awakened by more patients in need. As the city reeled from the immediate impact of the bomb, Miss Toshiko Sasaki lay trapped under a pile of books in the collapsed building of her workplace, immobilized and surrounded by others who were grievously injured. After 2 agonizing days amidst the rubble, she was finally rescued, though her ordeal was far from over. Each of these poignant narratives weaves into the larger tapestry of Hiroshima's aftermath, revealing not only the immense human cost of the atomic bomb, but also the indomitable spirit of those who, amidst unimaginable adversity, endeavored to aid others and rebuild their shattered lives. Part 4. A Sanctuary Amidst Chaos, A Day at Asano Park. As the sun began to set on Hiroshima, a weary congregation, including Mr. Tanimoto, Father Kleinsorger, and the Nakamura family, found temporary refuge in Asano Park. Amidst the confusion, a hopeful announcement echoed from a nearby boat proclaiming the arrival of a hospital ship, which tragically never came. Asano Park, though relatively safer compared to the city ruins, soon posed its own threats. Mr. Tanimoto, realizing the imminent danger of a nearing fire and that the severely injured could not be moved quickly, made a decisive move. Locating a small boat along the riverbank, he painstakingly cleared the vessel of the bodies that lay in it and began the somber task of transporting those who were barely alive to what appeared to be a safer location across the river. His efforts were momentarily halted by the sudden formation of a massive whirlwind, another cruel reminder of the bomb's relentless aftermath. In their struggle for sustenance, Mr. Tanimoto and Father Kleinsorge ventured back to the wrecked mission, where they managed to salvage pumpkins that had been roasted from the heat and unearthed potatoes that were inadvertently baked underground. Bringing these back to the park, they discovered that the Nakamuras, desperate for food, had tried to sustain themselves, but were unable to keep anything down after drinking contaminated river water. Through the night, Mr. Tanimoto continued his grim rescue operations across the river. He found himself continuously reminding himself of the humanity within the lifeless figures he carried. By morning, he faced another heartbreak. The tide had claimed the bodies of those he had tried to save, sweeping them away from the makeshift sanctuary he had created. Meanwhile, rescue came for Miss Sasaki on the third day after her ordeal. Friends finally located her amidst the rubble, and although her condition was dire, they managed to transport her to a military hospital for the urgent care she desperately needed. Dr. Sasaki, still at the Red Cross hospital, worked tirelessly through an exhausting 3-day shift. Eventually, he managed to contact his mother and assure her of his survival before collapsing into a deep, 17-hour sleep in his home. Unbeknownst to them, as the survivors of Hiroshima navigated through their new realities, another city, Nagasaki, would soon face a similar fate. At 11:02 a.m. on August 9th, just as Hiroshima was beginning to grasp the extent of the disaster, the second atomic bomb was dropped, sealing another tragic chapter in history. Part 5. A grim realization and a city's struggle to cope. In the days following the atomic bombing, the citizens of Hiroshima were enveloped in a cloud of uncertainty and rampant speculation. Unaware of the similar fate that had befallen Nagasaki, they grappled with the magnitude of their own disaster. Wild theories circulated. One rumor suggested that the devastation was caused by magnesium powder sprayed over the city by Americans, igniting the power lines. Another confused account proposed that the catastrophe resulted from an atom being split in half, a concept so complex that only a visiting team of physicists could comprehend its full implications. For the survivors, understanding the precise mechanics of their plight was a distant concern compared to the immediate challenges of survival. Amidst the ruins, life slowly carved out a path forward. The Nakamura family, overcoming their initial shock and loss of home, found shelter in Father Kleinsorger's novitiate chapel, striving each day to recover their strength and spirit. Father Kleinsorge, while ministering to the needs of his impromptu congregation, sent a colleague to check on Dr. Masakazu Fuji, who was discovered nursing a broken collarbone and somewhat alleviating his pain with whiskey, a small escape from the harsh realities that surrounded him. Elsewhere, Mr. Kiyoshi Tanimoto tirelessly continued his efforts to aid the wounded and comfort the dying, becoming a steady presence in the lives of many who had lost nearly everything. Dr. Terufumi Sasaki, unscathed by the blast but not untouched by its consequences, faced an endless succession of patients, treating severe burns and wounds with a resolve born of necessity rather than choice. Miss Toshiko Sasaki, trapped under rubble for days, now lay in a military hospital, her leg severely injured but not beyond saving. Her wait was long and filled with pain, but she held on to the hope of recovery. Amidst these individual struggles and small acts of resilience, a nation listened in collective anticipation on August 15th, 9 days after the devastating attack. The voice that filled the air was neither commanding nor familiar, but somber and unprecedented. Emperor Hirohito, addressing his people over the radio for the first time, announced the end of the war. This historic broadcast not only marked a pivotal moment in Japan's history, but also signaled a new chapter of daunting reconstruction and mourning for the people of Hiroshima. Part 6. The Lingering Shadows of the Atomic Aftermath. Weeks after the atomic blast had seared Hiroshima, the city's survivors continued to grapple with its debilitating aftermath. Among them was Miss Toshiko Sasaki, whose leg injuries had only worsened, necessitating a transfer from the overwhelmed military hospital to the Red Cross hospital. It was during this journey that she first witnessed the altered landscape of her city. Amidst the expected devastation, an unexpected surge of vibrant greenery blanketed the ruins, a startling contrast to the grey desolation. The bomb, in its destructive wake, had paradoxically invigorated the plant life, causing weeds and flowers like morning glories and daylilies to proliferate across the cityscape. At the Red Cross hospital, Miss Sasaki came under the care of Dr. Terufumi Sasaki, no relation, who himself had lost 20 pounds and continued to wear the glasses he had borrowed in the bomb's immediate aftermath. Though he deemed her overall health manageable, he noted several small hemorrhages dotting her skin, a concerning sign. Meanwhile, other survivors began exhibiting troubling symptoms indicative of a deeper, insidious affliction. Father Wilhelm Kleinsorger, initially robust in the immediate days following the bombing, found that minor cuts he had sustained inexplicably worsened and became infected. Mrs. Hatsuyo Nakamura faced a shocking personal loss when clumps of her hair began falling out, leaving her bald within days. Mr. Kiyoshi Tanimoto was plagued by a persistent fever and general malaise, the origins of which eluded even medical professionals at the time. It became increasingly clear that the survivors were suffering from radiation sickness, a then mysterious ailment linked to the atomic bomb's unseen yet formidable fallout. As scientists converged on Hiroshima to study the bomb's effects, they pinpointed the blast's hypocenter and estimated the explosion's intense heat at approximately 6,000 degrees Celsius at certain points. Their investigations confirmed the grim toll. Over 100,000 fatalities, attributed variously to burns, radiation, and other injuries. Amidst this grim reckoning, Father Kleinsorge continued his ministerial duties, visiting patients who, like Miss Sasaki, struggled with their faith in the face of such indiscriminate destruction. When confronted by Miss Sasaki about how a benevolent deity could permit such suffering, Father Kleinsorge responded not with theological platitudes, but with a poignant reflection on human frailty and moral failing. He suggested that the disaster was not an act of divine will, but a tragic consequence of human error, a fall from grace that had manifested in one of the most harrowing ways imaginable. Part 7. Paths to Recovery. The enduring resilience of Hiroshima's survivors. In the long shadow cast by the atomic bomb, the survivors, known in Japan as hibakusha, embarked on arduous journeys toward rebuilding their lives amid widespread suspicion and societal reticence. It would take years before these survivors received official support from the state, a testament to the pervasive stigmatization they endured. Among them, Miss Toshiko Sasaki found solace and purpose in her conversion to Christianity, eventually taking vows as a nun. Surrounded by death so early in her life, she developed a profound resilience, dedicating her life to caring for the terminally ill, without harboring any fear of death herself. Father Wilhelm Kleinsorger, later known as Father Makoto Takakura, after achieving his dream of becoming a Japanese citizen, continued his ministry despite chronic health issues stemming from the bomb's aftermath. His dedication endured until his passing in 1977. Dr. Terufumi Sasaki, spared from severe injuries, capitalized on his good fortune by marrying and establishing a successful clinic that brought him wealth and recognition. His life marked a stark contrast to the pervasive ruin that once defined his city. Similarly, Dr. Masakazu Fuji quickly adapted to the post-war changes, setting up a new practice that catered mainly to the occupying American forces, thereby utilizing his English skills and securing a prosperous future for his family before his death in 1972 following a decade-long coma. Mr. Kiyoshi Tanimoto, perhaps the most publicly visible among the survivors, channeled his energies into advocacy for the hibakusha, embarking on fundraising tours across the United States. His efforts even led to an appearance on the television show This Is Your Life in 1955, which controversially brought him face to face with Captain Robert Lewis, one of the pilots of the Enola Gay. Despite the heavy emotional burden, Mr. Tanimoto continued his activism until his retirement in 1982, eventually settling into a quiet life marked by reflection on his past actions and experiences. Mrs. Hatsuyo Nakamura, who cherished her role as a mother and provider, resumed her work as a seamstress after salvaging and repairing the sewing machine she had hastily protected during the bombing. Her later years were spent working for a mothball company, a stable job that allowed her to support her family until her retirement. Unlike Mr. Tanimoto, Mrs. Nakamura chose not to engage in political activism, instead adopting a stoic approach to life encapsulated in the phrase, "Shikata ga nai," it can't be helped. Each of these 6 survivors carved out a path through the devastation, navigating personal loss, health struggles, and societal challenges. Their stories, distinct yet intertwined by shared tragedy, highlight the diverse ways individuals cope with and ultimately overcome the profoundest adversities. Final summary. The atomic bombing of Hiroshima on August 6, 1945, stands as a stark symbol of wartime devastation, an event that reshaped not just a city, but the entire course of global politics and human empathy. With the dropping of the bomb, Hiroshima was transformed in an instant. Its landscape turned into a tableau of unspeakable destruction, marking the lives of its survivors indelibly. More than 100,000 people were killed, a number that encapsulates both immediate casualties and those who succumbed to injuries and radiation sickness in the aftermath. The survivors, known in Japan as hibakusha, bore the physical and emotional scars of the day, their lives a testimony to the profound human cost of nuclear warfare. Journalist John Hersey, through his detailed accounts of 6 of these survivors, provided a personal lens on the catastrophe. Each story, unique in its details, unified in its tragedy, highlighted the diverse responses of these individuals, from enduring physical and psychological pain to eventual adaptation and advocacy. Their experiences and actions underscore a broader narrative of resilience and recovery, but also of lingering sorrow and irreparable loss. As we reflect on the events recounted by Hersey, it's crucial to remember that the implications of that day reach far beyond Hiroshima. The bombing altered the trajectory of international relations and ethical debates regarding war and peace. It serves as a somber reminder of the destructive capabilities humanity holds and the enduring spirit to overcome and rebuild. Thus, the legacy of Hiroshima, embodied by its survivors, continues to influence discussions on nuclear power and armament, urging the world towards a future where such devastating force may never again be employed. Thank you for joining me today on this journey of learning and discovery as we explored the insights of another thought-provoking book in our growing library of knowledge. If you've enjoyed our time together, please take a moment to follow our podcast, give us a 5-star rating, and share 20-minute books with other knowledge seekers. Your support truly means a lot. Don't forget to join me again in the next episode, where we will delve into another enriching book. Until then, happy reading and happy listening.